What would you do if you woke up in a stranger's cabin, wrapped in blankets with a man you'd never met keeping you alive with the heat of his own body? And worse, if you didn't remember how you got there? The Wyoming high country in 1879 was not a place where weakness survived. Winter came early and left late. The wind didn't just blow. It screamed. It clawed at the few lonely cabins scattered across the mountains. It buried horses, split trees, and turned careless travelers into frozen statues, the wolves dragged away by morning. And into this deadly land came Clara. She was 19, a girl from the flat Kansas plains where summers burned hot and winters blew dry. She didn't belong in this world of steep cliffs and blizzards that erased the sky. But belonging didn't matter, because she hadn't come willingly. She had come as payment. Her father, worn down by drought and debt, had traded the one thing he had left, his daughter. Abner Thorne, a wealthy rancher in Wyoming territory, had offered to clear the debt in exchange for Clara. The wedding had been a quiet shame, held in his cold ranch house. Clara had stood like a ghost beside a man nearly 60, twice widowed, feared by every hand he employed. His grip on her wrist had been a warning of everything that would come next. She had whispered, "I do," only because she saw no other way to save her father. But later, in the silence of that unfamiliar bedroom, she found a different kind of strength, a strength born from terror. She had looked at the heavy bed, at the dress she hated, and she knew she could not survive what Thorne intended. She had run. No plan, no coat, no food. Only a horse, and the desperate hope that the blizzard outside might kill her before Thorne could claim her. The storm swallowed her whole. Hours later, she fell. Her dress tore. Her feet went numb. Her breath vanished in the cold air. And then, everything went dark. Luke found her by a frozen creek, half buried in the snow. He hadn't been looking for anyone. He lived alone, high in the mountains, away from the law and away from people. But when his horse shied away from a strange white shape in the snow, he saw her. A girl in a shredded wedding dress. Blue lips, frozen lashes, a heartbeat so faint it almost wasn't there. He could have left her. Bringing trouble home wasn't something he did. But he lifted her anyway, cursing the storm and whatever danger followed her. In his small cabin, he fought to keep her alive. He cut her frozen dress away with a knife. He held her against him under blankets, sharing every ounce of heat his body could give. He worked through the night, waiting for the first shiver. And when morning came, Clara woke. Not gently. She woke screaming. Her eyes flew open, her voice cracking with terror as she pushed away from the warmth surrounding her. She scrambled across the floor, dragging the blanket with her. The man, a tall, broad stranger with frost still melting in his beard, held up his hands. "You're safe," he said quietly. "I'm not going to hurt you." Where am I?" she gasped, her teeth chattering. "My cabin," he said. "Name's Luke. I found you by the creek. You were near frozen." Quote. She clutched the blanket tighter. Her heart hammered. Her pulse raced so fast it made her dizzy. Everything came back in flashes. The storm, the fall, the horse running off. But she didn't remember him. She didn't remember being undressed. Her eyes locked on the knife on the table. She lunged for it. "Stay back," she choked out, holding the blade toward him with shaking hands. "Don't touch me." Luke stayed perfectly still. "I'm not touching you," he said. "I'm just putting wood on the fire." He turned, slowly, carefully, feeding 2 logs into the flames. Clara stared at him, her breath ragged, her hands shaking so violently the knife trembled. He wasn't like Thorne. He wasn't smiling with cruelty. He wasn't reaching for her. He wasn't trying to claim anything. He just looked tired. And she didn't lower the knife, but she didn't run either. For 3 days, the blizzard held them hostage in his small cabin. Luke chopped firewood. Clara cooked simple meals from his supplies. They didn't speak much, but they watched each other in silence, two strangers forced together by the mountain. He kept his distance. She kept her fear. On the second night, the nightmares came. Clara woke screaming, fighting, kicking. She thought Thorn had found her. She thought she was back in that cold ranch house. Luke grabbed her wrists only to stop her from hurting herself, but the moment he did, she froze in terror. She shook so violently her teeth clattered. He let go instantly. "You're safe," he said again, voice low. "No one is going to hurt you, not while I'm here." And in that moment, something shifted. Not trust, not yet, but a crack in the wall between them. By the time the storm finally began to quiet, their silence had changed. Not fearful, not cold, just waiting. And then, as the world outside settled into a soft gray stillness, Clara stepped toward him, her heart pounding, her voice shaking, her hands trembling. "Luke," she whispered, standing close enough that his breath warmed her cheek. He looked up slowly, and in that charged, quiet moment, something neither of them expected began to pull them toward a fire far more dangerous than the storm outside. What happens when two people who should have feared each other instead begin to feel something they cannot explain? Something warm, something dangerous, something impossible to ignore. The storm outside had calmed, but inside the cabin, the air was tight and heavy, filled with a silence that felt alive. Clara stood in front of Luke, her hands trembling against the soft wool of his shirt. She didn't know why she had stepped toward him. She didn't know why she hadn't stepped back. All she knew was that for the first time since her wedding day, she didn't feel completely alone. Luke looked at her as if he didn't understand her, as if he didn't trust himself. His jaw was tight, his eyes unsure. He had lived alone for years. Peace was simple, quiet was safe. But this girl, this shivering, stubborn, bruised girl, was breaking something open inside him. "What are you doing, Clara?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," she whispered. I don't want to be afraid anymore." Luke swallowed hard. He stepped back, putting space between them. "Fear keeps you alive in this country," he said. "You can't push it away." "I've lived with fear for too long," she said. "It's taken everything from me." Her voice cracked, and he hated the sound of it. He hated the way she wrapped her arms around herself, trying to look strong, but failing. He hated the bruises on her wrists, bruises another man had put there. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fire popped, the wind moaned against the window, and the tension between them stretched, thin as wire. Then, slowly, Luke turned away. "I'm going to bring in more wood," he muttered. "Storm's easing. We'll need it." He pushed through the door into the cold. Clara stood there, staring at the door. Her heart hurt, not from rejection, but from something deeper, something she didn't want to name. When Luke returned, the look in his eyes was different, calmer, sadder, like a man who had made a decision he didn't like. "We need to talk," he said. Clara stiffened. "About what?" "You," he said. "Why you were in that storm, why you ran, what you're carrying." Her throat tightened. She didn't want to speak it. She didn't want to give the pain a voice. But she knew he was right. She owed him the truth. So she told him. She told him about her father's debt, about the wedding in the cold ranch house, about Thorn's hand gripping her wrist, about running into the snow in her ruined dress because she would rather die than be owned. Luke listened, silent, his face carved in stone. But his eyes were burning. When she finished, he spoke softly, almost to himself. "A man like him, that kind of man, takes and takes until he breaks everything around him." Clara nodded. "Yes." Luke stared at the fire. The flames cast shadows on his scarred hands. "My sister was like you," he said, "afraid, too afraid to speak, too afraid to live." Clara's breath caught. She didn't speak, she just listened. "She married a man who hurt her," Luke said. "I tried to help her, but I was too late." Quote. His voice cracked, the first real break she had ever heard from him. "She slipped into the river one night, the current took her, and I I never forgave myself. Clara's eyes filled. I'm so sorry. Luke shook his head. I'm telling you because I need you to understand something. He finally looked at her. I will not be the reason another scared woman dies. Her chest tightened. She felt something warm, something painful spreading through her. Luke stood. He walked toward her. Slowly, carefully, like she was something he didn't want to frighten. Clara, he said, his voice low and rough, I'm not Thorn, and I will never touch you in anger or fear or demand. He paused. But if we're both going to survive the winter, we need trust inside this cabin. Her throat tightened. I want to trust you. I just don't know how. You learn, he said simply, every day, a little at a time. And that was the start of something unexpected. They fell into a rhythm. Luke would chop wood. Clara would cook. They moved carefully around each other, quiet, respectful, aware. When she woke from nightmares, he didn't touch her. He simply spoke softly until she calmed. When he worked outside, she watched from the window, feeling safer knowing he was near. But something else was growing too. A quiet pull. A slow warmth. A feeling neither of them spoke about. Then one morning, Luke stepped outside to check a trap, and Clara followed him to fetch water from the creek. The air was sharp, the snow deep, but something felt different. A lightness she hadn't felt since Kansas. As she walked back toward the cabin, she froze. Luke was by the creek, stripped to the waist, splashing water onto his chest. The weak sunlight glowed on his skin. The steam rose around him. His muscles moved under his skin like something carved from the mountain itself. Clara's breath caught. He heard her. He turned. Their eyes met. Her face burned. She dropped the bucket. She ran back to the cabin, heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. That night, the silence wasn't peaceful. It hummed. It pressed. It filled the cabin until Clara couldn't sit still. Finally, she stood and walked across the small room to where he sat sharpening his knife. Her knees felt weak, her pulse wild, but she didn't back away. She stopped inches from him. Luke, she whispered. He lifted his head. His eyes darkened. His breath hitched. He set the knife down slowly. What do you need, Clara? Her voice trembled. Her whole body trembled. I'm tired of being afraid, she said. I want to feel alive again. He stood. He towered over her. She didn't move away. The air cracked between them. And then, with a shaky breath, she whispered the words that would change everything. Just do it, cowboy. His breath caught. Her heartbeat roared in her ears, and the world held still. What happens when two broken souls try to build a future, while the past hunts them like a shadow? And what would you do if the man you feared most rode into town calling your name? When Clara whispered those trembling words, the whole world inside the cabin changed. Luke froze. His breath shook. His hands curled at his sides like he was wrestling something inside himself. She stood there, scared, but determined, wanting to feel something she chose for once in her life. For a moment, he looked at her as if she were both a blessing and a storm. You have to be sure, he said. I will not take advantage of fear. I'm not afraid of you, she whispered, and she wasn't, not anymore. Luke stepped forward, close enough for her to feel his warmth. He reached up slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, he kissed her. Soft at first, then deeper, then desperate, like two people trying to remember what it felt like to be alive. But afterward, the silence returned. Not cold, not angry, just heavy. As the days passed, they moved around each other carefully, both unsure of what came next. Clara cooked. Luke hunted. But every time their eyes met, that night hung between them like a question neither dared to ask. Until the morning, Luke stepped outside and didn't return for hours. Clara began pacing. The wind rattled the cabin walls. Panic twisted inside her. When the door finally pushed open, Luke stumbled in, his face pale with fear. Snow covered his coat. His breath fogged the air. Clara, he said quietly, we have to talk. Her heart dropped. He tossed a crumpled flyer onto the table. A reward poster, her name printed on it. A sketch of her face, $50 for information on Clara Thorne. He stared at her like the ground had been ripped out from under him. "You didn't tell me," he said, his voice low and cold. "Luke, you brought him here. You brought danger to my door." His voice wasn't loud. It was worse. It was empty. Her eyes filled. "I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. I wasn't trying to use—" "You used my home, my supplies, my protection." "Luke, please, I didn't." "Get out!" The words hit like a gunshot. Clara froze. "It's freezing." "I won't survive." "You should have thought of that before you lied." He opened the door. The cold night roared in. "Go!" She stared at him, heartbreak showing in every inch of her face. Then she walked past him out into the dark, wearing nothing but his shirt and trousers. Luke slammed the door behind her. The silence afterward was suffocating. He stood there shaking, telling himself he'd done the right thing. Cut the danger out before it could kill him. He sat by the fire, waiting for relief. It didn't come. Hours passed. The fire crackled. His cabin felt smaller, colder, emptier than ever before. Then he saw it. Her tin cup. The tiny smear of lip stain on the rim. A trace of her past. Soft, feminine, hopeful. It hit him like a blow. He had done the one thing he swore he never would. Become the kind of man who broke someone already hurting. He whispered, "Sarah!" And the horror crashed over him. He ran into the night calling Clara's name. He followed her tracks up the mountain until the ground rumbled. The avalanche came fast. A white wave of snow swallowed him in Horse Hole. When Luke clawed himself out, bruised and half frozen, the world had been torn apart. But he kept moving. He searched until he saw a shadow under a rocky overhang. He rushed inside. Clara lay curled on the cold ground, stiff and silent, blue as the ice around her. He lifted her into his arms and carried her through the storm. He didn't feel the cold, didn't feel his injuries. He only felt terror. Back at the cabin, he threw blankets over her, stripped himself bare, and held her against him the way he had the first time, sharing every ounce of heat he had left. Hours passed. Her breathing was almost gone. He whispered into her hair, "Please, Clara, stay with me." And then she shivered. A small tremor at first, then another. Then she gasped, sharp and painful. Her eyes fluttered open. She saw him. "You came," she whispered. He closed his eyes, relief breaking across his face. "I will always come for you." She started to cry. He did too. They held each other in the dim morning light, both shaking, both alive. When she could finally speak, she whispered, "I'm so sorry, Luke." "No," he said. "I'm the one who failed. I pushed you away. I let fear decide. No more." She touched his cheek. "What now?" "We go to Laramie," he said. "We tell the judge what he did. We get you free." Fear flashed in her eyes. "He will kill you." "Let him try," Luke said. "I'm done running." They left at first light. The ride down the mountains was slow and dangerous, but they made it. In town, people stared. Whispers followed Clara. But Luke never left her side. When Abner Thorne rode into the muddy street, rage twisting his face, Luke stepped between them, refusing to move. When Thorne's hired hands reached for her, Luke dropped one with a punch and shot the other when he drew. The street froze. Luke stood in the center, pistol smoking. "This ends now," he said, and it did. Inside the courthouse, Clara told her story. Her voice shook, but her courage did not. The judge listened. The crowd listened. Even Thorne's arrogance couldn't hide the truth. The judge declared the marriage invalid. "You are a free woman, Clara Beth Page," he said. Thorne stormed out of town, defeated. Outside, it began to snow, soft and gentle, like a blessing. Clara fell into Luke's arms, sobbing in relief. He held her against his chest, his chin resting on her hair. "It's over," he whispered. "It's over," she breathed back. But their story didn't end there. A year later, they lived in a hidden mountain valley surrounded by pine, river, and meadow. They built a cabin together. They rescued a little girl named Annie from the snow and raised her as their own. They built a life of peace, one small moment at a time. And on a winter afternoon, Clara stood in the doorway watching Luke chop wood, strong and steady, steam rising off his skin. When he turned and saw her, she smiled. "Just do it again, cowboy." He dropped the axe, ran to her, lifted her, pushed her gently against the cabin wall, and kissed her like she was the only woman in the world. Their hearts were warm, their home was safe, their future was theirs alone, and nothing, not winter, not fear, not the past, would ever take that from them again.